Amen.
Hello, and welcome to my very first podcast.
Hi there, Kev. How are you there?
I'm doing well. This is Dr. Arturo Cepeda from Ecuador. What
Hi,
city are
everybody.
you in Ecuador?
This city is called Quito. Quito, the center, the capital of the country. And
The
we're,
capital of Ecuador is called
yeah,
Quito.
and we're
And
having some struggles right now with the with the people, highways blocked and stuff. So it's kind of,
the highway's blocked?
yeah, some highways blocked by community people protesting because there was a raise in the prices of the gas. So everything is the prices are rising. Everybody's kind of like in a
Hmm.
in a political moment, let's say.
Yeah, I can understand how gas prices can affect everybody at once.
Hmm.
So we're going to have our what we're going to do here is talk a little bit about what we know in the field of health and nutrition. And so, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, nice for me to be here, Kevin, in this interview. I wanted to thank you, and just it's a very good opportunity to say hi to everyone there, and a good opportunity to send like a big hug to your wife and all your family. You were so welcoming there. I really appreciate seeing you again and I'm gonna enjoy this interview. So I hope we can talk as we did when we were there in the States.
Yeah, Crystal says hello, and she does miss you, and we want you to come back and visit us again soon. So Arturo and I worked together at the University of Washington, producing different experiments for Jerry Pollack's lab, and we worked with one of the most fascinating was our ice experiments, where we
Mm.
created and filmed ice forming and ice melting at the molecular level through a microscope, and those were fascinating. I still have
It was
many of
fascinating, yeah.
those, yeah, that I need to publish. So as we move forward here, my first question is, in your opinion, what is the general condition of people's health in the United States as opposed to places around the world? Can you give us an observation there?
Well, what I could experience there is I cannot speak for the entire states, but I mean in Seattle and where the people that I've been with, what I found is like there's so much this happening, this movement in Seattle about nutrition and exercise and lifestyle changes that is amazing to have been witnessed that people are really pretty far and deep into it and really seeing the results of very bright brains and people like really healthy going through the woods of the beautiful city that Seattle is. And on the other side, there is this people that are having trouble with purpose of life and even getting suicidal or into addiction and into behaviors of family-less people and loneliness that is striking the population. So sadness and loneliness, that's what I felt in the corners of Seattle, some of them. On the other side, these vibrant and happy and healthy people that are just gorgeous and young women there in UW can really stop noticing them as very youngful and young and beautiful people. So it's very very nice to experience that too. And And I think that sadness has to do a lot of with the difference in the diet of these two populations, let's say. So your
That's
habits turn you into some bad habits, and diet is one of those bad habits that you can get into, like deep down the rabbit hole into darkness of disease and despair and purposelessness, or getting into the other side of just being well and better through a journey of changing your habits, changing your mind patterns, and giving you the respect and the wellness that you deserve.
That's very interesting. And I know that you and I together went through a rather rough time when a very close friend of ours had his daughter committed suicide. And that was very hard to watch him go through that. We didn't really have exposure to what actually happened, but the number of tragedies that our close friend went through really started to compile and stack up. And so I see what you're saying as far as the tragedy of mental illness, and the connection with the diet is a very strong one. I feel there's a certain number of things that go on at the cellular level that directly affect enzymes, peptides, and the generation of human cellular activity and the human proteins that are created from the smaller amino acids. And so the general idea is that good, nutritious food will keep you not only healthy physically, but healthy mentally. And can you tell me a little bit about what happens when the standard American diet replaces that good, nutritious food? What happens inside the body?
So it's interesting to see that, first of all, SAD, sad diet, is in our experience bringing people to sad feelings of it.
Yeah,
So
standard
we don't
American
want to,
diet. Wow.
and so that sad American diet, it's happening, or disconnection about the intestinal tube and the neural tube. It's very interesting because in the beginning, embryologically, we're just these tubes, and the endoderm is the tube from which the intestine and all the viscera are made. So this tube is connected to the neural tube by the early embryological network of the reticular brain. So it's a primitive brain that actually has a lot of information, and there's more nerves that goes from your gut to your brain than, or more information that goes like an input to the brain than the really output that should be controlling the the endodermal tube or the intestines. So what I mean is that this connection is really tied up not only into the neural system or for the central nervous system with this intestinal nervous system. The connection is really, really important. Not only that, but the fact that these neurotransmitters and these little amino acids that you don't get to digest if you have a damaged uh, pH in your stomach or some
Yeah.
chronic inflammation in your gut. If you don't manage to do this amino acid, that is going to impact the amino acids that in the nervous system are just called neurotransmitters. So it's the very same thing. It's just a cycle of these amino acids that we across the body we change the names from them, but it's a change of oxidation of the same amino acid. So when it's in the gut, it gives you some symptoms, and when it's in the brain, you get some other reactions that are mood changes, or the effects that you want to get over not overreacted, like allergies, but into modulation. So every symptom is just an exaggeration of a regulation pattern in the body that is just upregulated or downregulated. So for bringing that modulation back, diet is one of the first steps, because if you have an inflamed gut, you're never gonna bring a person back to wellness.
That is interesting, because I know that the experiments that we did on pH show that it's a very strange scale. The pH 1 scale is about this wide, whereas the pH 10 scale is about this wide. And so your stomach acid at 1, pH 1, is going to be operational. That's a healthy body, where the chief cells in the stomach are emitting this acid at pH 1. And the higher pHs have, just any pH in that scale added to the 1 can push it up to about 4. But if you take 1 and you try to bring down the 10, it takes so much more. And so how does that affect the stomach? Our understanding is that any liquids that you drink, which are pH neutral, 7, will then pull your stomach acid up out of the range of pH 1, and no longer will you be able to digest your food. And that seems to me pretty bad, because the standard American diet offers you a Coke and a smile with every meal. It's just, and then of course, in any fizzy drink, you have the carbonic acid that gets created, and then bye-bye amino acids. You won't get anything through. Now, the lack of nutrition, you were talking about inflammation, and you and I both subscribe to this. That people don't necessarily get fat as much as their organs, their skin, and all the fascia and all of the microtubules that are connecting everything together get inflamed and stop working. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, about the inflammation in the gut, I would like to say just two things that aren't quite understood in the amount that it affects the body. One of the things is that we don't just absorb through the lymphatics to the liver in the gut, but the actual problem is that the tubulin that is exposed because of the, let's say, corrosive action of too much acid, or too alkaline, too acidic food, just the pH or the toxins that we're eating into the, like, chemical toxins from glyphosate or heavy metals and the toxins that are corrosive, or like acidic, very acidic, that would really,
I would include oxidative
the lining
oils.
of the gut. Sorry, what?
I would include oxidative oils.
Yeah, like vegetable oils that are really rancid and oxidated and taste delicious at the beginning, but very, very soon they start to give you this terrible pain, because you already know that the body kind of knows that this is already rancid. It's just deodorized, so that you don't really have the feeling of what you're really eating. Okay, but so something like that, like this rancid oil, would would damage the lining of the gut, and so the tubulin is directly connected to the spine and to the nervous system. And there is a into these axons there is a retroaxonal transport that some people are not
Right.
aware of. So it really is toxic to the nervous system directly there. And on the other side is the fact that when you think about the gut, the very problem of the gut is that when you have an ankle or some articulation that is damaged and you keep using it, you won't be able to heal that joint. So that's why we put casts or some prosthetic thing, so that we with our mind we act like the dog that will keep moving or licking the wound, and we won't let that really heal. So that cast, that's the very problem in the gut, that we don't have that cast, or that cast maybe is the fasting, so that so that you have enough time to heal. But the problem is you need to keep absorbing nutrients for that healing to happen. So it's kind of like a paradox that you have to stop the gut, but the gut is the one that gives you the nutrients. So it's those days are very hard to manage when people are really inflamed, like intensive care unity. So the gut could just damage itself from the very enzymes and the very bugs that are in them. So we already know that handling these days of very problematic gut conditions, it happens in hours that people that patients die when they get really septic from the gut, or if you have some very bad problem with acidic problems, you get the ulcer, then they bleed, and then they just die. So it's in very septic conditions, or patients with many organs that have failure. It's as crucial as is in our daily life, because all the problems that are linked to the healthy gut. Even joking, when we were giving this talk in Seattle, remember we were giving this presentation. Even there, we were talking about toilet paper. That in a sense, we are the only animal in the forest that needs toilet paper for some strange reason. So that's kind of like a sign that something is very wrong with our food, or our digestion, because we should just be able to enjoy life like the animals do in the forest.
That was
No
very
need of
interesting.
toilet
When
paper.
when you brought that up, I thought about that, and I had never thought about that before, because I grew up in the American the paradigm of how to do things in a society. And one of those is just always mom teaches you at about 2 years old to wipe your backside with toilet paper. And I never thought about the fact that places very close to you, where you can go off into the Amazon jungle, still have tribes that have a natural diet and that don't have these problems where they need the prosthetic of toilet paper in order to be clean in the body functions. And like most animals, you would think, well, cows have probably the worst reputation for that, but even cows don't seem to have a problem when they go to the bathroom out in the field, even as messy as cow excrement is. So I'm not sure that'll fly on my podcast here, but that's
You're gonna get every cow lover back into fire for for this one.
Oh, I got a story I could tell you about arguments online, but we'll save that for another day. Uh, and one of the other things that we talked about, and you mentioned it, and you touched on it slightly, was the fact that the brain, the spinal cord, and the extracellular connections are built from microtubule collections of fascia that that hold everything together, and that's the like the tendons of the organs. And within those, there seems to be a low level light pulse system that operates as kind of a body's fiber optic network, for lack of a better term. And
I love that analogy. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I know that I've done a lot of work in communications and electrical engineering, and I know how fiber optic networks operate, and they need voltage. Can you talk a little bit about how the body gets voltage? Because I know if we attach one of those things to our arms, it can get our arms moving, and they use that for muscle regeneration.
Well,
How does voltage work?
I have to first say that this network that you describe is it's very. I love this question that you're raising, because it's so striking that we're at that cellular level so much connected through this network that it's surrounding everything and into everything. So it's even microscopically to the macroscopical structures. So the connection is like everywhere and three-dimensional. I can even say like uh, emphasize how pervasive that is, that connection that we have through these tubules and through this, let's say, transparent, translucent liquid crystal that fascia is. And and we already know that lasers and frequencies that go through that crystal, and it's maybe the next step in the nervous system to be seen as a liquid crystal, that all that water that is in this fourth state is in this liquid crystal, and it's holding all this information that flows through the body in just milliseconds, because the regulations that occur for some of the fastest reactions or the peak performance of athletes and people like that. Not that you're not an athlete, but I'm not as these good performers that I'm speaking of. The peak performance is just unbelievably quick, so that you need another system of information processing much more faster than just the electrical velocity or the potential action velocity. That's even slower. And so we need something much more capable of really processing into these speeds for doing what we do. I mean, no.
Yeah, I agree, because there's, I know that electricity through our atmosphere and through our fiber optic networks sends light pulses that travel at 186,292 miles per second. And although that is very fast, it doesn't explain how within the time constraints that we have for that, somebody can play a piano where their thoughts might wander a tad, and suddenly they're playing this, and they formulate the entire musical score in their heads, and it reaches their fingers without losing any time. This is miraculous to me. It's the same as the cat that jumps into the sky to catch a moving bird that might be moving so fast you can't see the the bird move. And the number of different instructions to the muscles are just, if you tried to program a robot to do that, you'd have a very difficult time. And I think that really plays forward when you know, not when you think about it, because you can imagine anything, but if you go to try to build something, yeah, the challenges mount very quickly. And so
I can remember. I can remember our lab handcrafts.
they were a bit slow and crude, yes, next to what we were trying to study. My fault.
You should show some explosion videos too, you know. You know.
Well, yeah, I'm making more of those. We'll talk about that some other time. So we've talked about the voltage in the body, and we've studied something called EZ, which is the exclusion zone, discovered by Dr. Jerry Pollack. And his 3 books, the last one forthcoming, the first one is Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life, and the second one is the 4th phase of water, where we have one phase would be ice, the second phase would be liquid, and the third phase is gas. But there's a 4th phase that is a area of water when it touches a hydrophilic surface, and it generates a area where it excludes all solutes. Everything that's solid gets pushed out of there, and you can read a voltage difference across that zone. And when we look at it through the microscope, we can see very clearly that this is happening. And I've gone in there and measured the voltage myself, and I know that it is substantial for the amount of space that it has. And when you multiply that by somewhere around 4 trillion cells in your body, that voltage can be very, very high. And although the current flow doesn't really have any substantial amount to it next to our systems here on Earth, the voltage being so high does say that you can send signals through it, and by regulating that voltage, we can send signals to all parts of our body. There has to be a switching mechanism that says, move this finger instead of this one. So there's selectivity, sensitivity, and everything that it takes to send and receive good signals. And when we damage that system, especially like what you were talking about in our gut, then we can no longer function correctly. Can you tell us what happens to damaged systems?
Well, the connection with the exclusion zone water and the 4th state of water, it's very interesting because it correlates in this, let's say, theoretical discussions that we have about it. Not that we have proven that, but that the thing is that it really much correlates to both of the things. So like structurally, let's say, providing like this liquid crystal matrix through which the information or the waves should travel and being this like a connected, unified field of connectedness, that all this light can travel or inform every cell, or even every nucleus of the cell, through these light beams of information that will travel through this liquid crystal ubiquitous unity of the body. That's one thing of the thing. And the other is that the voltage would be very much, because for that's just kind of like the display or the device in which this information would travel, but you have to power that device or that LCD. Right. You have to power it. So the powering of it Easy might even explain that part, because when it forms, you know, that the proton this so it forms this polarity in itself by bringing all these charges from the exclusion zone to the protonated zone. So there you have this dipole, and you can even harness that energy for optic things or for chemical things. So it's very interesting that this change in the distribution of the atoms in the water would give you these two things, that maybe this coherent crystal through which the information would travel faster, and the other thing is just the energy that it would provide for that and for maybe other processes, just by getting the sunlight through your skin. So like a solar panel power being that needs clean water.
Mm, that's very interesting. A lot of information out in today's society says that sunlight is bad, that there's a detrimental effect to the body if you don't cover yourself with things that block out the sunlight, sunscreen, and things of that nature. However, what you're saying as a medical doctor is that sunlight is not only good for you, but that it recharges your electrical system and allows your fiber optic network within your body to operate better. And that to me would be a very big turnaround in people's behavior that would lead to being more healthy. And I like the idea that, you know, we grew up in the sun, we evolved in the sun, and we should not block it away and cause ourselves these intracellular problems that then grow into a disease. So that's been very interesting, and I think very helpful. And I hope our listeners take to heart the fact that the standard American diet does not support and promote good health, low inflammation, good digestion, and good intracellular and extracellular energy. And what that all equates to is either feel good or you don't. And when you don't feel good, you end up at the doctor's office rather than at the refrigerator throwing away all the bad food and doing some research on your own and finding out what would really help.
Well, for somebody that doesn't know what this a standard American diet is, maybe we can just sum it up like saying you should avoid all the white things like white flour, white sugar, white cocaine, white milk, white, all these white things that are man-made or too handcrafted or too refined or too industrialized. All these white substances you should avoid in any form they give you as bread, pizza, or any really very processed food that comes into a plastic bag that's not made by nature. So you don't want that.
Yes, we've stopped eating everything that comes in a box or a can, and it cuts out quite a bit. Everything in the middle of the American grocery store is in a box or a can. Everything that is grown or harvested from animals is on the outside, and that's, we don't go down the middle aisles unless we're looking for toilet paper.
How are your crops, by the way? You have a nice
Oh, they're just wonderful. As a matter of fact, we have a little garden out behind the medical center here that we go out and tend to during the daytime. And having crops all around us, and eating berries right off of the vine really has changed not only the way we feel, but our energy totally is up all the time. And so I actually got on the horse the other day and rode around for the first time in a long time, because I'm feeling so much better. You know, the things that we found together while we worked together at the University of Washington Bioengineering Laboratories really has set my life on a new path, and I do feel 100% better. You know,
That's so
I
nice
can't
to
thank
hear.
you enough.
That's so nice to hear. So nice, man. I enjoyed really when you were there as a friend, and we were making some music too. That was very, very nice.
Yes, have to do that some more. Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Arturo Cepeda from Ecuador, from Quito, Ecuador. And everybody in Quito is on a keto diet.
Keto. Not everybody eats pork here, fried pork.
Fried. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. Well, hopefully
fried,
they're
fried in lard, and so a
fried in
lot of.
lard, yeah, not vegetable oil. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much. And I hope that this will be the first in a long line of podcasts. And I will hope you come back and do this again very soon.
Okay, I hope everybody enjoys as I did, and nice to see you, man. See you soon.
Bye bye now.